there, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And today I'm going to be interviewing Karla, the owner of Eat and Be Hoopy in Vermont. Now, there is so much that is unique and interesting about Karla's business and her journey. First of all, her main offering is hula hooping classes and parties, which is so cool. But she also offers art classes and all sorts of stuff. We're going to get into all of the details in this conversation. But one other unique thing that we talk about a lot in this video is that she is located in a mall. So we are going to get into all of the specifics, the pros, the cons, the good, bad, and the ugly of opening a play space in a mall, because that is one of the most common questions I get, because there's a lot attractive about opening in a mall right now. A lot of times there's a cost savings. There's a lot of empty spaces. There is a lot of opportunity in malls, but like I said, there are some downsides. So in this video, we are going to talk all about Karla's business. She's going to share what works for her and what doesn't work for her. And we're going to dive a lot deeper into opening a play space inside of a mall. I've linked all of Karla's business information and our website, all of that in the video description if you want to learn more. But without further ado, here is Karla from Eat and Be Hoopy. Hi, Karla. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
All right, why don't we get started by you telling me a little bit about yourself and your business?
All right. Well, I'm a single mom, and I have two daughters who are about to be 17 and about to be 22. So I have had more and more time to do things for myself, do start projects. And a couple of years ago, I decided to rent a space. So it was originally to have hula hoop classes, and I didn't even know how far it was going to go. And I had been doing parties at people's houses here and there, and I was working at a school. So I kind of didn't have a real definite endpoint, And so I started doing the parties here because we were in Vermont, so it gets cold, very cold. There's a lot of indoor season, so it was making a lot of sense to have the parties inside, and that started going better and better, and I was really enjoying it. My family is involved. My parents were in their 70s. They helped me, and my daughters don't as much, but they have their own lives. So but it just keeps building, and it's sort of what led me here is that that it was going well, and it was feeling more like a business that needed more structure. And so and then during the week I was feeling like we could have more fun going on during the week, and I started looking, and that's how I found you, Michelle. And so I'm like so excited because it feels like my questions are being answered by being part of the community here.
Great. Well, we are so lucky to have you, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. And there's so much that's unique about your business that I'm really excited to talk about. But before we kind of get there, because I want to talk about your space and your location, but before we get there, can you tell us just, I know you offer the hula hooping classes and you evolved from, non-physical space to having a location. What are, kind of give us an overview of your total offerings today. So I know you said classes and parties. Is there anything else you offer at your business?
So the classes have been kind of put on the back burner for now, just because it was like I was having too many things. I sort of cast out like a really wide net and was sort of focusing on what was sort of picking up momentum. So the parties were doing well, and then and I also have been offering activities, and that's sort of a newer thing. I'm still shaping that, like what does that look like, but it's actually starting to take shape. Like someone came from out of town and like booked an activity to do an hour an activity. So that's what I've been focusing on mostly, is the parties, and then sort of by the hour activities.
Yeah. So what is an activity? Like, how would you define that?
So we have hula hooping activities, art activities, and I have a list of various so painting, we do picture frame decorating. We can make a lot of sensory things like make our own Play-Doh, slime, oobleck, those type of sensory things. Rock painting, magic wands. Then there's some cooking activities, candy necklace making, uh, fruit and vegetable decorating, carving, um, and general like lessons you could do. So all of these activities could be done by the hour, or they're done at the parties. So the parties are packaged by the activity. So so there's a hoop party, there's an art party, there's a cooking party, there's a tiny tot party, which is for up to turning 5, and then there's a few more packages that are, like I said, based on the activities.
Okay, so you said 5 years old. What is the total age range you would say that you cater to currently in your space?
I say that it's all ages, but the ones that I see the most are between turning 3 and turning 9.
Okay, so that's still a really good age range. I love that. All
Yeah.
right, so that's a really good overview of your business. And of course, I'm going to link to your website and everything in the show notes or in the YouTube video description, depending on whether you are watching or listening. But I wanted to kind of dive into your physical location because that's kind of what um, got us to schedule this interview because I think it's really interesting. So you're located in a mall, is that correct?
Correct.
So, and you also mentioned that you're in Vermont. And I think this is one of those things we were kind of chatting offline about this, how malls are very area specific, but where you are malls kind of still where people go to shop? Are the malls busy? What kind of people are you seeing in the malls?
I would say that the mall is it's averagely busy, and I think it's more of it's definitely like a seasonal thing. There's only one mall that serves a large area, so I think that, so I'm asking people, when they're here a lot of times, say I haven't been in the mall in years, and they're here just for some reason. I'm getting more people who are coming because they are coming specifically to come to my place. But then there's people who, Christmas shopping, obviously there's some of that going on, but then people will come here for like various odd reasons. The mall does a lot of craft shows or job fairs, or if maybe someone puts on a family fun day in the mall. And there are some other activities. There's a mini golf place, and there's a train and like a sort of a ride that a guy runs here. So, and the train goes all around the mall. So there's things to do here, but there's a general idea that like nobody comes to the mall. So it's weird because people say that, but there are people here. I see people every day, and like the older people in the morning walking. But it's open because of because of COVID and just the decline of malls in general with online shopping. The mall has been more flexible about their hours, and there's a lot of small businesses in the mall, so that the stores aren't dark. I guess they started renting to more affordable for businesses, which is great. So I'm getting to know a lot of the other business owners, and they're people who live in the area, and so I think that it's taking a little bit of an upswing.
Yeah, and there was probably kind of going back to what you were talking about the pandemic. I think a lot of those bigger stores closed, there was a lot of exits, and that left a lot of space for smaller businesses, for more local businesses, which I absolutely love. Of course, I hate to see any businesses close or exit any community, but it did leave a lot of space for new things. So I think that was one positive takeaway from having all of those stores unfortunately closed down in the early, 2020 time.
It did leave an opportunity for small business, and then we had the only Target in the area, like for I don't know hours, is in the mall. So I think that there's certain things, and it's also in the mall is surrounded by a lot of other stores and shop, sort of a shopping hub. So it is sort of centrally located. So I've been asking a lot of people who, when they come in, oh, where are you local? Where do you? So they're coming from, so it's interesting, Burlington, I'm in Burlington, it's actually South Burlington, so in northern Vermont, and there's very small growing population, which scares me. It does scare me because, it's not like Vermont's like super growing or anything. It's just like there's not a lot of people here, but there's all these little pockets of communities all around the Burlington area. So mass people, oh, they're coming from this one or that one, or the other. And I guess that's where a lot of the young families are moving. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, a gamble or whatever, I guess. But it's encouraging what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. So I do want to talk about, I know you mentioned like a cost savings and things like that. I do want to get into that, but really quickly, and not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned that you have a combination of walk-in traffic and people coming to the mall to see you specifically. Would you say, it's kind of 50-50, or what would you say the split is between people just kind of wandering in, knowing nothing about your business versus people that specifically sought you out?
I might say that at this point it's a 50-50, but that's because I really started being more mindful in my advertising, and taking a lot of your amazing advice. So they'll also asking people, how'd you know, at first it was kind of like a word of mouth thing. Like somebody would maybe wander by and come in and talk to me, and then maybe they would tell somebody, and then they came in because someone told them to come in. But then I started really doing all my advertising with the local online local kids activity web web page, and that has been very good because people will tell me they come in because they saw me advertise there. So that has brought it up to more of a 50-50 thing.
That's great. Does the mall advertise for you at all?
They don't. I mean, they don't. No, they don't. They don't do a lot of
Okay.
advertising, period. Um, they will post stuff if I give it to them. They're I do think that everything that's going on in my situation is, like you said in the beginning, very area specific. Just all the elements are very area specific. No, the malls, I wish they would do more advertising, but they are willing to do, like I'm talking with the mall managers about doing an Easter event. So that would be a good way for them to, I think they will advertise that. Oh, and they do a Halloween thing where they have trick or treating around the mall, and that's been huge. We did our third year this year, and it's so great. And the kids we do like a little black light hooping and give prizes away thing. And so and the mall does a lot of advertising for that. So yeah.
Cool. I love those. We always go to those. We have a little village by us and we always do that and go into all the local businesses. But they do one for like every holiday. They do a trick or treating one, which we went to, and then they do one for Christmas time. They do them all year. So you should really try to, put a little bug in that manager's ear to do a couple more because it is fun. And it's, I love the opportunity to go into a store that I might have, never had the chance to go to before. I've never heard of it, but, I would certainly go back and um, it's just nice to explore what we have locally.
And have a reason to go do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Especially with 3 kids, I need a reason.
uh,
Especially to wander into like a soap shop or like something or like a hula hoop shop. I would have never like it's hard for me to, put something on the calendar if I don't go in there and see it in person. So I think that type of advertising is really cool. And that's a big benefit of being located in a mall. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about next. So what made you choose your specific location?
I chose the location first. I did base it on the fact that it was a 5-minute drive from my house, and I felt
That's
that,
important.
yeah, I thought if I'm gonna have to go there all the time, then yeah, I don't want to have a long drive. But it also was, as I mentioned, and I felt very centrally located. And South Burlington is actually having some issues right now. And so a lot of things are going into South Burlington. A lot of more people are shopping outside of downtown Burlington. So I knew that. And I just feel like and I've been proven right that people are coming from all over. So it does feel like, because I know like it's the local, people in the neighborhood, to attract them for the open, for a lot of activities since they're close, that they want to come from. But I'm pleased to see that it isn't just the South Burlington, but it's all these around it. But then I chose the space because it was 25,000 square feet, 2,500, sorry,
I was
2,500.
gonna say,
No,
wow.
I'm sorry. I'm so bad with that. 2,500 square feet. And, I like feel like I could use more space. I could probably keep using space if it was given to me, but it was like big enough. But I had been thinking, oh, I could probably, because I was just thinking about hula hooping, I'd probably get away with a warehouse, because I wanted high ceilings and for like tossing hoops and things. And so I thought a warehouse would be sufficient. Sometimes gymnastics places are in warehouse, had a warehouse parks, but those were expensive, or they were a lot of money. So I said, let me just check the mall. There's so many dark stores. Let me just check and see, what have I got to lose? Just see what they cost. So I really would say, like, even when you think, oh my gosh, like I'm never going to be able to afford that, or it's like that'll be out of my reach. It just pays so much, don't you think, to just check, just find
Absolutely.
out. Like, what have you got to lose? Say you find out it's too much money, move on, But I was so pleased. It was like a little gem to discover.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about the pros. Are there any cons of being in a mall, in your opinion, that you found?
I think that it is a little rough around the edges.
How do you mean?
Um, the space, I got it as is. So it had been a clothing store, it had been an art gallery, it had been, all these things, and it was just like it has all kinds of weird stuff. Like I'm not, since I'm just renting it, I'm not gonna do a lot of build out to it or anything, or I'm hesitant, at least for a while, to do a lot to it. So I would say, like, that's maybe a kind of, anywhere you're renting, you just do, how much do I put into it, but the general, but you can fix up a space, you can clean it, you can paint it, you can do things, but the general element of the mall, I would say, isn't terribly upscale. So I think that, which it's okay for me. I mean, I do a lot of artwork here. It's great that we can get, this is a place you can be messy. We use lots of glitter. We have sand and water. Paint goes on the floor, and that's fine. So it works. But if you wanted a more refined space, I mean, I guess you could make it that way. But the element, I'm trying to be
Go
nice.
ahead. Don't worry about it.
But some people that come to the mall are a little rough,
Got it.
a little loud talking, some shoplifting. You know what I mean? But especially in the evening.
So that brings me to kind of actually the next question that I wanted to ask is, are your business hours restricted to the mall hours? Can you open earlier? Can you stay open later? What is the deal with the hours? Because that's something I've always been curious about.
That is definitely probably very area specific, but in this case, because of the difficulty of people being able to hire, the mall shortened. I do believe they shortened their hour. Yeah, because they would be normally open until 9, but so they are open from 10 to 7 or 10 to 6 on Sunday. I think originally it may have been like 9 to 9. It's probably what malls are usually. So they shorten their hours, but then they don't require the store to be open, because they understand that you might be trying to cover all the shifts yourself, which is one thing that I'm having trouble hiring anybody. So or at least the right person or whatever. But so yeah, I don't. So it's great because I can have literally for like a year or two, I did not have open hours at all. I only was here when there was an event.
Oh, interesting.
So they're definitely happier when the gates are up, when your lights are on and the gates are up, but they are so nice. and they're so understanding, and they really want things to work for
Right.
everyone.
So you don't have to kind of abide by their specific hours. And is this a strip mall or is it
The indoor mall.
indoor mall? Okay. I know you said something at the beginning, but I couldn't quite recall. So I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly. That's really interesting because I think that's always been in my mind. One of the biggest cons is that if you want to open early because, parents want to get out of the house early, or if you want to stay open later for like a private event or something, that you have to be within those boundaries. But it's nice to hear that at least in your specific case that that's not the case.
It
So other
used
malls might be more flexible than I think.
it might be if they are having similar issues. Now
Right.
they
Right.
did originally have that rule. The lease says that actually. Well, they changed it for the situation, but the original lease is that you have to be open the hours the mall is open. But yeah, they've changed that for everybody. So that's like, and that could change. I guess
Right.
that might be a con, is that with things, if things shift, I also could be made to move. That would be like a con, that like if a big store came in, a name brand store, that they could make me move. What they told me was that they would do everything that they could to not let that happen, and that they would try to find me another space to move to, which if it was only that easy to just move to another space.
Right. And
But
it makes perfect sense now why you said you didn't want to put a ton of money into that specific space if it's in your lease that, they could shuffle you down the way in favor of a bigger brand or something like that.
yeah, that would be, and they're not, it's all, they're all nice about it. They don't want to do that, but they would have to, the owners, there's so many owners, they would have to do that. And that's understandable. But otherwise, I mean, it's, people might not be able to get started. Some people, I'm not sure that I would, been able to start, or would have been willing to start, somewhere where I had to make a huge investment.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you said that about previously kind of going back to being only open during events. I actually have another client who is at a mall in Pennsylvania and she only does birthday parties. And so she's only there when she has events. So that's really interesting. And she's really successful with that model too.
Oh,
And it actually works out for her because she didn't have to build, a permanent play structure. She doesn't have to have, a ton of decorations because every event is so different. She does like these big elaborate events, not just birthday parties, but graduations, mitzvahs, um, adult party. It's just really just a blank event space. She specializes in kids parties, but that's interesting that both of you kind of found success with the different types of hours. So that's interesting. So
yeah,
that's at least two malls that will allow you to kind of, be flexible with your hours. That's two kind of
there's
anecdotally, yeah, and anecdotal
Pennsylvania.
examples. What was that?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, York, Pennsylvania.
That's really cool.
Called Party Palooza. Her name is Karen, and she's awesome.
Oh my God, party pool. Well, it sounds fantastic. And also she's does it caters to not different ages too,
Yes,
different groups.
yes, and she is awesome, and she's been very successful with that. So that's
Well,
great.
hear that.
That we have two examples now of malls being a little bit more flexible, and like you said, I think it's a sign of the times that malls are kind of ebbing and flowing, and they want to make the businesses happy so that they continue to pay rent and so that additional businesses continue to sign up. But as businesses, there's a lot that doesn't come to our advantage in all sorts of aspects, but we should take advantage of these sorts of benefits when we can, for
I was
sure.
thinking so. And because I didn't know you existed. If I had known, like, if I'd started from like the right point or whatever, the beginning, step one, that, and I think about, well, if I can pull this together and, get some nice, organization, tighten things up here, I think about, oh, opening another location. There's other little spaces in the mall, to have a second, like, I'm sure this is a common issue that the weekends, I think I even heard you saying this in a modular, about how it's very limited. You can only have so many parties
Right.
on Saturday morning. So to have another space to do that, to keep the private party thing, or maybe somewhere else, maybe in another little town. So it's really exciting to think that this could be a thing.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to the mall case, it's a downside that you might be shuffled around, in favor of a bigger store. But if you feel the need to expand, it's probably much easier to find a different space to expand into in a mall versus if you sign a 5-year lease and you're not in a strip mall, you're not in a plaza, there's nowhere else to move to. So if you do feel the need to expand, you're not able to. At least with the mall, you have options where you can either downsize or upsize depending on how business is going. So that's, I think, could be, even though it's a downside that it could, happen not in your favor. If your business needs to evolve or change or pivot for whatever reason, I think it's so cool that there's an option to do that.
Yeah, I think that could be. I feel like that's a more likely thing to happen than for them to move me. And I think that the more, my business is bringing something to the mall, adding to the atmosphere in the mall, then the more that they want. And I hope that I've maybe encouraged people to bring their business here, or we've all sort of encouraged each other with I said, with the mini golf place that's down this way, and some other stores that are just kind of fun and in a sense go together as far as meaningful experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of made me think of another question. Does your mall have a non-compete with its businesses? Like, for example, if can there only be so many kids focused businesses, or can there only be like one coffee shop or something like that? Is there
I
anything in place that you are aware of?
I'm not aware of it. If I had to guess, I would say no. But maybe not now. But if they may have something like officially,
Right.
um, or normally something they used to do. But that no, I think that they just let anybody come in. Sometimes there's something going on in the little, like the middle kiosk area right in front of my store, and there has been businesses there that have been really irritating and annoying. But I mean, that could maybe happen any. I mean, you're in the really close quarters, so it's like right there.
Yeah, a lot of the people in the Playmaker Society group unfortunately have not so nice neighbors. Like, for example, there's a lot of people in the group who have issues. We had an issue. We shared a wall with a restaurant, and the workers were always smoking cigarettes right next to our door. We had like an emergency exit at the back of our play area, and that was, in the back alley where the workers would smoke, and the door wasn't like sealed 100%, and so sometimes there would be like a smell of smoke and it was just awful. But we can't tell them not to smoke there. It's a public space. We talked to our landlord about it, but there's only so much that they can do. But yeah, that's kind of a risk
And then
everywhere, having
yeah,
uncomfortable neighbors.
it could literally happen anywhere.
Yeah, I think there was another example where a play space was next to a kid's dentist, and at first glance, it was great. It was perfect. The businesses complement each other because they're not competitors, but they serve the same audience. But then it ended up being a nightmare because kids would pull up thinking that they're going to the indoor playground, then they have to go to the dentist, and then it makes the experience like 10 times worse.
Oh
And
no.
it was also bad because the noise through the wall from the indoor playground to the dentist was also really disruptive. So yeah, there have been all sorts of issues. So I don't think that that's a mall specific issue. I think anywhere you go, unless you have a standalone building, you're going to run into neighbor issues, right? It's just like moving into a new neighborhood. There's always that one crazy neighbor that you just can't escape from.
And they could move in after you move in too,
Right. And
you know?
even if you don't have, even if you are a standalone building, a lot of times I've seen businesses move in and the neighbors around it, not as in business neighbors, but like the houses that are around it are like protesting, and they don't like stuff that the business does, and they don't like the traffic, and there's always something. So, I think the kiosk, of course, is a risk for the mall, but also you really have to be careful in this business, more so than I would have thought when you choose your space. And having those non-competes is interesting too,
I don't,
because
I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I know in some strip malls or in some plazas there are definitely non-compete agreements. And it's not just to be restrictive, but it's to protect tenants as well, right? Because you don't want another, I don't know if there ever would be, but another hula hoop class studio moving in there, or another play place or kids party place or something moving in after you've already signed a lease, right? That wouldn't be good for anybody. So I'd just be curious.
Do the landlords have a reason? Like they just want, because they want the businesses to do well, and it just
Right.
doesn't make sense to have two at the same.
Right. And you don't want businesses feuding with each other or being nasty or anything like that. I think that's more common than not to have some sort of non-compete agreement with, or a certain agreement that says, and I believe it's more so, in my experience, it's been more so like I said, in favor of the tenants. So like if I'm going to sign my life away for 5 years, if I'm going to dump 100 grand into renovations and I'm opening an indoor playground, I want to have assurance that this landlord isn't going to rent another indoor playground 2 doors down in the same exact plaza, right?
So
So
true.
yes, it's good for the landlord because it gives a higher probability that the businesses will succeed if there's a variety, but it also protects the tenants from their investment that they're making. So,
That's
all
I'm gonna
right,
ask.
I know, I know we kind of got off track a little. Sorry about that.
It could be, yeah, it could be, yeah, that would be, because like I was listening to something you said about competitors and how it was basically like you don't want to, a competitor, when a competitor comes in, you don't want to have that stomach drop feeling.
Right.
And that would be, if they were real close by, would be even worse.
Yeah, I mean, down the road is one thing, like a couple miles away, but in the same plaza just seems, unnecessary. And I just feel like you'd always be like staring out the window. It's not going to be good for anybody.
Customers, where am I?
Exactly, exactly. So, like I said, I know we got off track, but one thing that I wrote down that I wanted to come back to that you said that was really interesting was that your mall particularly is very seasonal. So, how do you handle those seasonal fluctuations?
Well, and like now, it's and actually I noticed with the like October was a little colder than it was this year. So like there were people still doing outdoor parties into October. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is that like a global warming thing? Is that going to be a regular thing? But when it's fine, in the winter, people are wanting to do indoor stuff. Now I'm doing the open playtime, and that seems to be appreciated. So when it starts to be, and then we got the mud season in like March, when it starts to be like June, and then the parties would drop off. Now, last year, I got more calls for summer things, and um, this is an area where people love to be outside. They really, who doesn't like to be outside, but like year round, really. I mean, there's a lot of outdoorsy, skiing, and then, stuff in the summer. So I tried to shift I tried doing summer camps one summer, and I think I just didn't get it together soon enough, like wasn't well planned or whatever. And then I kind of thought like, do I really want to do that? Because that's what a lot of people do. So I could still end up doing that, but I'd really like to keep doing parties. So I got some calls for like, it's like going to places. So it wouldn't be here necessarily, maybe like some, but it would be more like going places for a party. So yeah, it makes me feel bad that it was like that's like sitting empty, but I end up using a little more like just like a workshop, like a workspace to like
Yeah.
get
I
ready
mean,
things or take a time to like do repairs inside. But yeah, I'd like to be more active in here in the summer though.
we did the same thing. We did a lot of mobile events in the summer. We took our soft play equipment and took it to people's houses, and we used our physical space. We held a lot of balloons there because when we would go to these events, we'd bring decorations too. We do like the big garlands and things like that. So there are ways to still, of course, leverage your physical space, even if you're expanding beyond your four walls. But yeah, I'm sure in Playmaker Society, that's always one of the hottest topics this time of year is, how are we going to all get ready for next slow season? What are we going to do? What are our revenue streams? So I know this is your first year in the group, so it's always a hot button
I
topic
bet
this
it
time of
is.
year.
And of course, it's different, right? Depending on I was noticing, like, I was like looking at all these like picnic party, things that people were doing. And I'm like, oh man, well, if you live in like a nice climate, you probably could do picnic parties year round. So I was thinking like, yeah, you got to like have slightly different offering. Yeah, I'm excited to think about that. And work. And I did get more calls last summer than I got before. So really, really one of the things that I'm excited about and like being, in the Playmakers Society and the Academy is just learning about how to tighten things up and just give it more of a structure and more of an orderly way of doing things so I can measure it.
Yeah, and having that structure and having, you know, everything tightened up, it's also going to just snowball into more benefits. Of course, like you said, it's going to make hiring easier, training easier if all of your systems are set up and things like that. So I think um, you're going to see the benefits kind of everywhere in your business, hopefully. But I want to get to kind of future plans. But before we get there, because that's kind of what I like to end on, if you could go back, thinking back a couple years, is there anything that you would do differently if you could go back?
Um, honestly, if I, hindsight's 2020, of course,
Right,
but
of course.
I really just wish I had found you sooner. Honestly,
Mm,
I
yeah.
hate to sound cheesy or whatever, but I mean, I really, really like if I just known, like, had a plan, like, or whatever, just had more of a plan. But I just didn't, because I had to go through a lot of like 2 years just to figure out, wait, what are we doing here? And I feel more and more solid about it. And like it feels so good to have it like a script to tell people, when they ask a question, I'm not like, oh no, they asked me, what do I do here? Then I can be like, oh well, I can, present information that's the same as I would tell the next person. Then it's good solid information. And so I just wish that I'd had it more smooth, done in a more smooth way so that I didn't have to suffer for so long, like struggling and wondering, what do I do? How do I make this happen?
And that's exactly why I created it, because I did the same thing you did. So I get it. But thank you so much.
Sounds like it. It sounds from when I listened to your podcast and thinking like, oh my gosh, I wonder if Michelle had to go through some of these things that
Yeah. And I mean, I went to business school. We had owned businesses before. This is just such a unique niche industry. And I think that's why I even, I sold my business 5 years ago, and this is still my full-time job. And I will probably never stop doing it, because it was really shocking to me just how nuanced this industry is, and how, things that work in other industries don't work in this one. And so much is counterintuitive and a lot doesn't make sense. I've had friends, I've owned other businesses. My husband has owned other businesses. Our family's owned other businesses. And there's really nothing quite like this industry. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, because even people who go in fully prepared, they've hired consultants, have everything buttoned up, they're shocked. And it's a lot harder than people think. And like I said, so much is not intuitive. So much is the opposite of what you would think going in. And there's so many, things that you just don't know until you know. So
and
thank you so much for those kind
it
words.
seems like every business that in the play making field is just no one's quite the same,
Right.
unless you're like
There's
like
there's
like a copycat
similarities. We
example.
all
But
have the same, yeah, it's funny because even though our businesses all look a little bit different, we all have the same problems, we all have the same issues, we all have the same pain
that's the
points
cool
and things
part.
like that. So that's the common thread. Is it's so funny how all of our businesses are different, but we serve the same client base. And we have the same challenges. And I think a lot of that relates to the customer base. I'm not gonna, get into too much, about that, but working with parents and kids it's challenging. There's high stakes, and it comes with a lot of, like I said, nuance is what I'll call
Yeah,
it.
and
But
the safety, just safety.
yes.
The safety part. I mean, you could just talk forever about safety. I mean, physical safety, food things. I mean, emotional stuff. There's so many ways to keep kids safe and happy.
Yes, and parents can be a very challenging
So
bunch
different.
to work with. Yes.
They're all coming
I've
from different places.
Yes, before my play cafe, I was a wedding coordinator and I thought working with brides was very difficult.
Yeah.
And those stakes were high. And then I started working with parents and I was like, "Oh, this is might even be harder and more scary." But anyways, I don't want to get too off tangent. I think I have just one final question. Well, two final questions actually. Um the first last question is if you could give any advice to somebody just kind of starting out on this journey, or even if you could kind of look back at yourself a couple years ago, other than, finding the program earlier, what would you say to someone who is looking to embark on this journey?
I think that I would say that starting small with what you have is so doable. Like you really don't have to have, you can start small.
Mhm. I love that. And one quick question, how long is your lease? You don't have to share like details, but like, is it a 1 year lease? Is it a 5 year lease?
I did do a 1 year lease. That's
That's
they
great.
have a month to month, but I did a year. I did another year. I'm about ready to do I guess another year.
Mhm.
It's
I
coming
love
up.
that. I talk all the time on YouTube, especially about starting with, I call it a minimum viable product. So if you want to just do birthday parties before get a bank loan and before you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a renovation, you can do a month to month lease and just do parties doing what you love, whether that's hula hooping or whether that's, something else. If you're a former teacher, maybe it's, something different. Maybe it's princess parties or maybe it's balloon decorating, something like that. I love that is you can start small because the last thing, and this is something that we've also seen in the group, is people will put all of their life savings, so much time and energy into a brand new space, and they'll get into it in a couple months and realize, oh, I actually don't like this. Like, I don't like doing this. Because a lot of people go into it kind of like what we were talking about before. They go into this industry thinking, oh, I'm a former teacher. I don't want to be in the classroom anymore, but I want to be around kids. I want to work with kids. And then they realize, of course, depending on how you set your business up and what your revenue streams are, but a lot of it is really working with parents. It's not so much working with kids. And
Yeah.
that's what you're going to be dealing with. Not only are you going to be dealing with parents most of the time, once you kind of start to expand and you start to pull yourself out of daily operations, almost 90% of your job becomes managing your team. And a lot of people just don't want to do that and they don't like that. And that's not their personality. And that's totally valid. But I think, like what you said, starting small and just dipping your toe in the water before making those big investments, especially at a time where the economy is so uncertain, I think is so smart. So I think that's great advice. Thank you.
I mean, it's
And then,
totally doable, right? Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
in fact, I wish if I went back, I would not like I tried to do too many things. And
right.
and it was like I wasn't you just one person can't do that many things well. So it rather actually to just start with one little thing, one part and do that really well is
Right,
much
like
more
birthday
doable.
parties or something, for example. I love that. And yeah, I think that's great advice for people getting started. Is to start small, focus on one thing. And I've worked with so many people who have dove headfirst too early and regretted it. I have never ever met an owner who regretted waiting, who regretted taking it slow, who regretted, starting with a minimum viable product, so to speak, whether that was doing soft play rentals, whether that was doing balloon decor, whether that was doing a month to month lease somewhere before signing, a 5-10 year lease, something like that. So thank you so much for that. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask one final question, and that is, what's next for your business? Do you have, any future plans? I know you talked a little bit about, possibly a second location, but is there anything that you're excited about coming up? Anything new that you're planning on offering or anything like that?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I am excited to keep going and seeing, if some of the things I'm implementing are going to work. So like the immediate future. I'm just excited watch these things come to fruition that I've implemented. And then I hope that, of course, like I don't want to jump into too much, in that spirit. I do need to have a little patience and wait and build a little bit more, but I am really excited about getting a second space, either an extension or something, so that I can take on more, so I can do more birthday parties. But that that comes with, like, having someone to train. Since I am like the talent or whatever, I need to have someone who can also do, I do the entertainment and the activity and everything. So I'm excited meet meet somebody that can work with me here.
Absolutely. And that's a great thing to look forward to. I think that's a great attitude to start the new year with. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for letting me share, Michelle. It's so great.
All right. So I'm going to link your website in the show notes or in the video description, but where else can we follow you?
Well, I am on Instagram.
All right, I will link that as well. What is your Instagram handle? Just in case people don't feel like going to the show notes, because sometimes they don't.
Eat and Be Hoopy, two O's, Hoopy.
Okay, Eat and Be Hoopy. Awesome. And it's so funny you say that because the first time you emailed me ever, I read it as Hoppy. And I thought it was like a brewery slash,
Oh
it's
my gosh, talking about
that
choosing names.
common.
Oh my gosh. Nobody, people walk by all day long and they don't pronounce it. They say everything but Hoopy. And so I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's okay. I ran into the same issue because my business name was Climbing Vines, and everybody thought it was a winery or a brewery. And there was actually a brewery that I had never even heard of at the time because I was new to the area when I opened, and it was called Climbing Vines with a,
Oh my gosh.
and it was like an hour south. And I would have never chosen the name had I known that it was there. But I was new to the area. I didn't know, and it wasn't like in the immediate area. It was an hour away. But oh my gosh, the amount of people that would call, come in. So I'm with you
Oh,
there on the name. I have sympathy for
again,
you.
sometimes you just don't know until you do it, right?
Right. Another great lesson. And that's a perfect example of, not signing a too long of a lease, because if you do ever expand or move, you can maybe do a little, rebrand. That'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one time the tax people were my dad does the taxes. They called him and they were charging. They wanted to charge some big amount of taxes, and he said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, well, we just assumed you were a restaurant." And somehow the taxes were like a lot bigger for that. So, a beer, yeah, beer, hoppy.
Got it. Yeah.
So yeah, live and learn.
Yep. Makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much, Karla. I really appreciate your time and insight today.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. Have a great night.
You too. All right, that wraps up my conversation with Karla, the owner of Eat and Be Hoopy in Vermont. As I said, I've linked all of Karla's information in the video description, but if you have a question or if you want to propose a topic or leave a suggestion for a future video, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to like the video if you found this conversation helpful. All right, I will see you soon. Bye for now.